All right. Good morning, everyone. I think most of us have found our seats. A few other folks are making their way there. That is awesome. We're just a few minutes after 9, so we're going to go ahead and get things started. Okay. So to start, I did want to let everybody know, if you have not made your way to the table with donuts, there's donuts there, there's donuts here, there's also coffee and water at either side of the room. So if you need any refreshments, then please make your way to the side. Don't feel shy. It can happen now, or you can get up at any point and go fill up your water, get more coffee, all right? So I think that's it. Headed to seats. We got coffee and water. You'll notice on your table there's a paper with a QR code. So everything that you've been handed out at today's event, the publication, the speaker bios, the agenda, the presentation slides, they are available online. You can scan that QR code and find those there. It's also on this slide here. We do have a limited number of hard copies of the PowerPoint slides, so if you're looking for those, they are on the corners of the refreshments tables in the back, all right? Or you can stop at the front at check-in to grab those as well. So I'm just going to go over the agenda for this morning, and we are going to roll into the afternoon today. So thank you so much for just taking the time out of your days to come learn about what's going on with groundwater in the Kaweah Subbasin. We really, really appreciate, I think I can speak on behalf of the GSAs and the team here on stage, that we really, really appreciate that everybody took the time to show up for this event, to hear what's going on, get updated and stay informed. So we do have some presentations to update you on just what's going on, what's happened since the last year's event, if you were here, and then what's coming up over the next year, and just kind of set the stage for what the Subbasin is working on together. We will have time for Q&A, so if you all are thinking of questions, we're going to hold those questions until the end, till we get to that Q&A portion. We ask that you make your way to the front. There is a mic here at the front of the room. If you're not able to, we do have some handheld mics, and we have a team here to run those mics around. So if you do need that help, you want us to come and hand you a mic, please just raise your hand and we'll make our way over to you. We are serving lunch this afternoon, so we have a barbecue lunch, as well as we have some table exhibits that correspond to some of the presentation topics. Those are at the back of the room. So once you've had your lunch, you can make your way back there. All the panelists will be available to talk more. If you have more questions or you want to talk a little bit more in depth, you can make your way to those tables and learn more. There's also some great map exhibits to illustrate some of the concepts that they're going to be talking about. So don't skip out on that after you have lunch. We know you want to get somewhere else, but this is your chance to talk to these folks this morning and this afternoon at this event. So take advantage of that before you head out. Just going to do some very brief introductions, but we do have more comprehensive speaker bios in the packet that you were handed this morning, as well as online at the link and QR code I mentioned. We do have Mark Larson here. Mark, the General Manager of Greater Kaweah GSA. Next to him is Aaron Fukuda, the Interim General Manager of Mid-Kaweah GSA. Mike Hagman, Executive Director of East Kaweah GSA. These guys wear multiple hats, so I'm sure you've seen them in other settings, but today they have the GSA hat on. We also have Diana Zagara, who's an Assistant Water Resources Engineer, also with Mid-Kaweah GSA. And then on the consultant side of things, we have Trey Driscoll, Principal Hydrogeologist with Intera. Derek Williams, Principal Hydrogeologist with Montgomery & Associates. Last but not least, Matt Clinchu, Principal Engineer with Provo & Pritchard. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get the program started. I'm going to hand the mic over to Mark to just give us an introduction, set the stage for what we have to learn today about the Kaweah Subbasin.
Thank you, Becca. Good morning. Good morning. This is a great turnout. Really good to see so many of you that thought it was important to come today. It tells me that management of water resources, groundwater resources, is important to you. that what happens in this sub-basin is important to you and you want to keep up with it. And it's good to see that you've taken your morning to come and join us here. I really appreciate that. I'm sure donuts and barbecue is also an incentive, so glad you guys came for that. So we're here because of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. I assume most of you recognize, that was, the state put that into law in 2014. And it requires that we form agencies, groundwater sustainability agencies, to manage groundwater locally. Luckily, the state felt that was important and allows us to do it locally. And here in the Kaweah Subbasin, we have the Mid-Kaweah GSA, the East Kaweah GSA, and the Greater Kaweah GSA. And all those are set up with elected leaders that sit on a board and manage all three agencies. Wanted to make sure you understand that you are welcome to our board meetings at any time. They are posted on our website, and they're there for you as the public as well as for the decision-making of the board of directors, and also quite a few committee meetings that happen amongst each of the GSAs. You're very welcome to attend those as well. So know that there's this event where you can learn about where we are going, but you can also keep up on pretty much a monthly basis on what's happening with the GSAs, and so welcome to join us. One thing that has been very instrumental in our progress here in the Kaweah Subbasin is the establishment of our technical core teams. And we use these technical core teams to develop our groundwater sustainability plans, and specifically the plan that was adopted and put into place in November of 2024. The reason we got there and got it at the quality of those three plans are due to the core teams that were put together to establish that. And so these core teams are instrumental both in developing those groundwater sustainability plans, as well as now as we move forward in implementation. Implementation is something that we've been working on since day one. The challenge is when you're writing a plan, it takes you away from some of the implementation activities. So we're real excited to have what now looks to be like an acceptable plan by the state. And we're able to spend a lot more of our time and resources and our focus on the implementation. We're going to talk a lot about that today. We have 9 core teams that have been put together towards this implementation, and they've all had an instrumental role. Matt Clinchu is going to talk about the groundwater level core team and a lot of work that they have done, and he's also going to hit on well inventory and well registration. And then we have the core team of groundwater quality, and Trey Driscoll today will talk a lot about how that's coming together in our first rounds of sampling here for water quality in groundwater. Interconnected surface water is looking at how there's a connection between the water that flows in the surface water channels and the groundwater below, especially in the upper watershed, and how that we can make sure that that consistently flows. And we're working hard in the core team of setting up monitoring devices, both shallow wells and stream gauges, so that we can best keep track of where those interconnections are and keeping them whole. Land subsidence is really important, especially in the west side where we have the lower aquifer and the clay layers. And Derek Williams from Montgomery & Associates is going to talk about subsidence and go in a lot of detail on what the core team has been working on there. The mitigation plan, the core team for that has worked really hard. We are now replacing wells, domestic wells that go dry and are due to our management, overdraft conditions. We're replacing those those dry wells and making sure that we mitigate for those appropriately. The core team's been very active on that. Small community wells, that's an important core team in that we recognize that small communities have their own unique conditions. The better we get to know the small communities, the better we know their conditions, we can be proactive instead of having water supply issues in small communities. We can maybe be proactive and react before there's an issue. So that core team is very active in that role. Groundwater accounting framework is a way of looking at the water balance and the water accounts that we have, what the groundwater that's below, whose name is on that water, and how that attributes to those in the subwatershed. So those core teams have just been really critical as we move forward. Now, it's important that you understand the relationship that we have with the state. The way it works is when you first form your GSA, your groundwater agency, you have to set that up with the state and get approval for that. They want it to be managed locally, and we have, as I mentioned, 3 managed locally here in the Kaweah subwatershed. Our relationships start with the State Water Resources Control Board. They have not been excited about our plan to date, and so they passed us on to the State Water Resources Control Board for more work, potentially to be in probation. We have good news on that front, and Aaron's going to talk about that in a few minutes here. So we are in better shape now with the State Water Resources Control Board with our plan that we submitted in November of 2024. And so that interaction will eventually get us back to working with the State Department of Water Resources, and that will be more a good process for us to be continuing on. Now, that's been a real journey. We've spent the last year plus with our technical core teams working on improving that plan that we turned in on November. And since then, we've been working a lot on how we coordinate together in the subbasin, use similar management criteria and data to work together. Our mitigation program was a major improvement, especially with the State Water Resources Control Board, as we work to mitigate wells that went dry specifically. And it involved, amending our GSP towards August. So we had a probationary hearing identified for last year. That was canceled. Actually, it was for January of this year. We were slated for a probationary hearing. Now we have December 2nd date at which we will go before the State Water Resources Control Board, not in a probationary hearing, but a simple meeting in which the State Board staff is suggesting that we be returned to the Department of Water Resources. From there, I'm going to have Aaron fill in a lot more detail on our status and where we're headed. Aaron?
Well, good morning, everybody. I get the pleasure of bringing you guys good news, and I think the first good news was the managers were talking up here just as we started the presentation. And just so you guys are aware, all the managers' blood pressures are in check now. We are all on medication, and we're all seeing our doctors, and we're good to go for the next couple of years. But it's been a struggle over the last 5 years, and we understand that struggle was really reflected in trying to provide some leadership and guidance for you growers as you navigate all the challenges that you guys see on a daily basis. We understand that water is just one of those challenges. You have other regulatory pressures. And so one of the big ones that was looming over this subbasin was, as Mark pointed out, the potential that the state was going to come in under intervention, or what we call probation. And in 2020, when we submitted our plan, DWR clearly had challenges with our GSP. And then in 2022 and 2023, unsuccessful revisions of that groundwater sustainability plan put us in front of the State Water Resources Control Board. And their role is the backstop. It's the last stop before they take over. And they're going to assess whether or not you can meet sustainability in 2040, and your plan was put together in a way that's going to achieve sustainability. So in 2023, we were facing this challenge here, and we were directed by our boards and our committees that we work with, and I think consistently from the growers that at least I talked to, that the goal here was to keep our subbasin out of probation or intervention. We understood that intervention or probation by the State Water Resources Control Board meant really two things. It meant, number one, they were the only action that they could manage groundwater on behalf of the landowners is to put you on a water diet, is what I used to call it. They're going to cut you back, and it won't be under local control, so you're going to use their numbers, those numbers that they develop. And they were only going to spend 1 year in developing that strategy and implement that. And generally speaking, everybody's going to take a significant haircut in their water supply to achieve sustainability almost immediately. And then second part of that intervention is they were going to charge you well registration fees and pumping fees for the water that was allocated to you. And those fees would fund state programs, not local programs. And they weren't going to use that money to, say, build a recharge basin or buy more surface water. It was really to manage the overall statewide program and the allocation program within your subbasin. So the clear direction we got was GSAs, keep us out of probation. Let's keep our money local, let's keep our allocations local, and we think we have a better shot at it. So with those instructions in hand, we worked through our boards and our committees and with you landowners. I know we've been in front of you several times. We understand that there were difficult decisions, there were compromises, and a lot of collaboration that yielded the outcome that we now have, which is the State Board has evaluated our latest revision of our groundwater sustainability plan and has decided to send us back to the Department of Water Resources under local control. So that means our money will stay local, our decisions will stay local. It doesn't make them any easier, but it makes them decisions that we get to make collectively here. And we know that they're tough, and that you're working with us, and we're working with you through these allocation programs, projects, well mitigation, things like that. So we appreciate that cooperation. I think this room shows that we can get the job done locally. So the State Board has continued, oh, I'm sorry, forgot to put the slide up. If you're looking for information on this process, you can follow this QR code and all the information is there. In order to return us to DWR, the State Board has completed an assessment report of our groundwater sustainability plan and our ability to achieve sustainability. The assessment really highlights a lot of the subbasin's accomplishments in overcoming the deficiencies that DWR and the State Board laid out. I have to say that it was a collaborative effort with the State Board. They told us what we needed to fix. We went and fixed it. We went back to them with how we fixed it. And they told us thumbs up or thumbs down. And we worked for 2 years straight on that process. I will say that there were a lot of nights and weekends, and that made this all come together. The assessment report and the decision will be taken up on December 2nd at the state in Sacramento. It's not, as Mark laid out, the interesting part was in November of last year, they decided not to have a probation hearing, so they took that off the table. So now it was just a decision on how and when to return the Kaweah Subbasin to DWR, and so they finished that process, and they're going to take up that decision on December 2nd. Now, the assessment report is out for a 30-day comment period, but we don't suspect there's going to be any potential issues there. We've worked hard to make sure we've covered all the bases on behalf of the growers. And lastly, what I really need to say in relation to this probationary process is I need to, and this is not a want, this is a need, to thank everybody that kind of put the time and energy into this effort. I think all of us can attest to, yes, our consultants are paid to solve this problem, but they were only given one option: keep us out of probation. And between our consultants, our boards, our staffs, there was just a tremendous amount of sacrifice that went into putting this GSP together. And I will tell you this much: there is nothing that we left behind. We put it all on the table, and I think that was part of the success. So if you have a chance to meet some of our consultants, you'll see why we chose them, why we're using them, and plus, please thank them because they are sponsoring lunch too. So, but they really were the difference, because if you left it to Mike, Mark, and I, we're covering multiple responsibilities. There's no way we were going to get to this finish line. So they put the technical information together. They gave it to our committees. Our committees went to work on, does this work, does this not? Because they have to translate technical things into on-the-ground actionable items. And then our boards took those up for approval. So it was a team effort all the way around. So now we have it in our rearview mirror that we're headed out of probation. So what's next? Well, we have implementation of the groundwater sustainability plan. This is not an effort where you put a plan together and you put it on the shelf. Now we have to take that plan and put it into action. If we don't, fulfill those actions, we could end up back in probation and state intervention. So we are keenly aware of the effort that we have to do, so much so that it can't be lost that the Kaweah Subbasin boards, managers, and teams have been implementing as we've been actually making these revisions to the GSP also. So now we take that focus that we had on the GSP and we're going to turn that into the programs and projects now that we need to achieve sustainability. And one of our goals is to try and get those done as soon as possible. It accomplishes a couple things. We get the sustainability earlier and we do it at a lower cost, because every year we wait, the cost of everything we want to do goes up. So with that, and in our implementation window, our focus today wanted to be on, so what are we going to focus on in the near term? And so what we brought is our technical teams to explain to you how we're approaching 3 key items that we're working on: water quality, land subsidence, and groundwater levels. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our technical teams, and we're going to go through those items, and then we'll cover some more, and then we'll have question and answer. But again, I want to thank you folks for taking the time, working with us over the last several years, having the patience. Trust me, I know we pushed your patience all the way to the limits, but you can see the successes that we're having now. And please take these incremental developments as wins for our subbasin. They really are. And we need to add those up. There's no one particular win that's going to achieve everything, but it's the incremental goals that we're achieving that's going to add up to sustainability for you, which gives you confidence that your groundwater levels are sustainably managed for your operations. So I think next up is Trey Driscoll, who will be covering water quality. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Good morning, everyone. My name is Trey Driscoll. I'm a principal hydrogeologist at Interra, working with the subbasin to implement the SGMA water quality program. During the next 10 minutes, we will present a summary of the current status of the program. Feel free to top off your coffee if necessary. As you may be aware, there are a plethora of regulations when it comes to water quality. Irrigated lands regulatory program, CV salts, waste discharge requirements, and even Title 22 drinking water regulations. SGMA is focused on degradation of groundwater quality due to GSA-approved groundwater management activities after January 1st, 2015, or when the legislation was adopted. This means that GSAs are not responsible for legacy pollutants in the aquifer, such as nitrate, covered under other programs like IRLP. However, if a GSA project, such as recharge, causes nitrate to migrate to a previously unaffected well and water quality minimum thresholds under SGMA are exceeded, the GSA must consider potential mitigation options. The primary challenge with water quality is determining whether groundwater degradation is a legacy pre-2015 issue that's been caused by GSA management activities, or whether the monitoring program, so what we're doing is implementing a monitoring program to gather data for assessing these water quality issues, determine which ones are covered by SGMA and which ones are covered by other regulatory programs. To implement the water quality program, we're going to cover the following: new commitments, monitoring, exceedance review and policy, noticing, and provide a progress update. New commitments of the water quality program include monitoring for 8 constituents of concern at a network of 71 monitoring wells known as representative monitoring sites. Monitoring is performed semi-annually in spring and fall to track seasonal trends as required by SGMA. These activities are funded by the GSAs. Additionally, the GSAs perform an exceedance to review to determine if degraded water quality is attributable to GSA management activities. Water quality results and exceedances are reported and notified both regionally to the sub-basin through semi-annual reports, and locally to well owners with resources provided on how to get wells tested. The SGMA water quality program is performed in cooperation with the Kaweah Water Foundation to leverage resources and coordinate with other complementary regulatory programs. Here we've got pictured Jacob Salinas. I don't know if Jacob's here today. I didn't see him earlier. Oh, he is. Hey, Jacob, stand up. Yeah, I'll call you out. No, Jacob is a great resource here in the basin. If you have questions about your wells or water quality, I highly recommend reaching out to Jacob. Really appreciate the efforts he's undertaken to make this program successful. Based on review of historical data, 8 constituents of concern were identified in the sub-basin for screening. Based on spring 2025 monitoring, so we've completed 1 round of sampling to date, one of these constituents, tetrachloroethene or PCE, we have not detected that in the network. We're going to do 1 more round of monitoring for that, but we may actually recommend removing that as a constituent of concern. We're just not seeing it in wells. And the reason to do that is just really we want to be cost effective with our network and only prioritize on constituents that we are detecting. Seasonal sampling is performed 2 times per year, as I mentioned, in the fall and spring. The fall sampling is currently ongoing, so I'm surprised Jacob's here to be out sampling. As mentioned, work is coordinated with the Kaweah Water Foundation. This partnership reduces cost and labor of data collection. And then here we've got Stephanie Ruiz, who is a program manager with Greater Kaweah. She helps Jacob with the program, and she's also a great resource for information about your well. The exceedance policy is meant to determine if groundwater quality degradation at a well for each constituent of concern previously described as a post-2015 impact due to GSA management activities. So we've developed this decision support tree here that's pictured that steps through our data-driven process to make this determination. Really, at the end of the day, we need to distinguish whether a groundwater quality impact falls under the scope of SGMA or it needs to be addressed by another regulatory program such as ILRP. Data validation is important as we don't want to publicize inaccurate information. One thing we do is we perform quality assurance, quality control on the sample results, and if necessary, collect confirmation resamples if results seem uncharacteristic. Here is an example where we actually went out. This is an actual sampling time series that you see here, and we just had an unusual result. We went back out, we took a confirmation resample, and in this case, we were able to confirm that the well tested below the threshold. Timely reporting results is key to informing owners and the public about current groundwater quality conditions. We inform each well owner of exceedances once notified by the lab. Notification is also broadcast via semi-annual groundwater quality reports posted to the GSA websites. Registered wells within 3 miles of an exceedance will be notified. Well registration will be discussed later today. The Kaweah Subbasin is on track with SGMA water quality program implementation. Progress today includes completion of the spring monitoring and reporting, identifying new wells for monitoring to fill data gaps within the network, working on completion of the exceedance review, and as I mentioned, we started the fall 2025 sampling. Water quality priorities for 2025, 2026 include finalizing the monitoring network, the ongoing implementation of exceedance policy, and documentation of water quality results in the annual report, and finally, integration of the notification protocol with the well registration program. I'll be available today if you have any questions about the water quality program. As always, feel free to contact me directly. With that, I'll turn it over to Derek Williams, who will be discussing land subsidence.
Keep it going. Pushing on this one. All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Trey. My name is Derek Williams. I am a principal hydrogeologist with Montgomery & Associates, and I'm going to be talking a little about land subsidence. It's an issue probably many of you are somewhat familiar with because of its impact on the Bryant-Kern Canal. You probably read a lot about what's happening with the Bryant-Kern Canal. Fortunately, in the Kaweah Subbasin, subsidence is not impacting the Bryant-Kern Canal here in our subbasin, so the Bryant-Kern Canal is really not our big concern here. It is a concern. We're following it, and we're making sure we don't impact it, but we have not impacted it so far. So that's a good thing. However, it is still going to be a concern. Subsidence is largely in the western side of the basin, and it's going to be a concern because of its impact and because of the importance that DWR puts on it, and I'm going to touch on that in a minute here. So what is subsidence? It's basically the sinking of the land surface. And SGMA requires that we either avoid or minimize subsidence due to groundwater pumping, and we can't avoid it because we already have it. So minimize is the game that we're playing. And minimize, in DWR's view, means start acting on it now. You can't minimize it 10 years from now. You start minimizing it now. And because of that, it has become a very important issue for us that we have to start addressing fairly soon. The collapsing of the land is caused by a number of things. And people have asked, how do we know why the land is collapsing? And we can look into it. But the main cause in the Kaweah Subbasin is due to our groundwater management there. And so this is the connection. We can manage the groundwater to minimize subsidence, and that's what we have to do under SGMA. And we do it largely by controlling pumping or by injecting water or recharging. And those are going to be some of the principal things we talk about. I do want to point out that subsidence isn't necessarily bad on its own. Lowering of the ground surface isn't intrinsically bad, But what happens, and what the state is concerned about, is how it impacts infrastructure. I've already talked about the Frank Kern Canal because it does have a big impact on the Frank Kern Canal. Not an issue in this subbasin, but we have other canals that it does impact. Roads, pipes, gas pipes, electric lines, all of these can be impacted by subsidence. Most notably, wells can be impacted by subsidence. So if you have a well that collapsed, maybe your driller said it looked like a can was crushed underground, maybe your pump bowls got stuck because of it, that crushing of your well was caused by subsidence. That's the financial impact that we're seeing here. So one reason we want to minimize this subsidence, hopefully start to minimize this problem of wells collapsing and having to re-drill new wells. One thing that I want to point out is that subsidence is a high priority for the state, and that's one of the things that's driving our work here. The state has said that to minimize subsidence, you have to be working on it now, basically, and they don't want to see a lot of new subsidence. So you may have heard that SGMA gives us kind of a 20-year horizon to get to sustainability. The state's not buying that for subsidence. They want to see that we're making progress on it soon. Because of that, subsidence is going to be driving a lot of the groundwater management decisions your board members are going to have to be making there. For better or for worse, probably for worse, a lot of the decisions will be guided or influenced by subsidence, and that's why it's an important issue here. A few things about subsidence that I want to point out because it leads directly to how do we manage subsidence. So these three things I'm going to go over, but they will lead to what are we going to do. One of them is subsidence is caused by lower groundwater levels. So as we lower groundwater levels more and more, we're going to get more subsidence. The obvious issue there is try to stop lowering groundwater levels. That's a clear one. The second issue is that a lot of the subsidence, it turns out, is caused by low groundwater levels in lower parts of the aquifer. Lower parts of the aquifer that have a lot of clay, that drives a lot of the subsidence. So one of the things we got to think about is that the place we want to be extracting our water from, or do we have some options for that? A third thing to know about subsidence that drives our actions is it's generally irreversible. This is unlike water levels. Groundwater levels, when they drop, you can put water in the ground and the groundwater levels will rise again. Groundwater levels are reversible. They go up and down. Subsidence is not. Once the ground collapses, it stays collapsed. This is one of the things that's driving the state towards saying you have to stop subsidence now because it is irreversible. And that's why our decisions are that we have to start taking action quickly. One other thing you want to know about subsidence is that it's regional. It cannot be solved by one group. It cannot be solved only by your GSA or by a neighboring GSA. It has to be done regionally. Now, this is a map of subsidence, historical subsidence between 1949 and 2005. The most subsidence in this map is in the purple areas. That's where the most subsidence was occurring. And I'm showing this map because I'm going to show that subsidence changes over time based on where the pumping is. So historically, a lot of the subsidence has happened in the Tulare Lake subbasin and the Tule subbasin, but more recently, subsidence, this is 2015 to 2025 subsidence. This is the same map that's in the corner back there that you can see. And you see that the subsidence has moved from the Tulare Lake and Tule subbasins. It's still in the Tule subbasin, but it's moved more into the Kaweah Subbasin as our demand for water has increased. So it's that demand for water that's driving the subsidence now. This map also makes the point that subsidence is regional, and we're going to have to address it regionally. We don't want to say the Kaweah Subbasin is going to take on the entire role of solving subsidence. We cannot. So with that, what have we done? What are we doing for the subsidence? The GSAs did develop a subsidence mitigation plan. It was reviewed by the State Water Resource Control Board, as was mentioned by Aaron earlier. We are going in front of the board on December 2nd. We expect that they are going to send us back to DWR. Effectively, I wouldn't say they accepted Our subsidence plan, it was a big part of what we did in the last couple of years, to get a subsidence management plan to them. I wouldn't say they accepted it, but I would say it is acceptable to the state right now. So we have developed a plan that's acceptable to the state. Not only that, the state put out what's called a best management practices document saying, if you were going to manage subsidence in the best way, this is what you would do. And I'm not saying we're following it exactly, because we aren't, but I would say we're in line with it there. So we're doing pretty well. We have a plan that we're pretty confident the state is comfortable with as far as managing subsidence. The GSAs, the managers, have done a great job negotiating this. There is a downside to this plan. It's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of action, and fairly quickly. So what does the action look like? Well, it's three things, and these go back to what is causing subsidence. One is we have to promote regional solutions. We are not going to do this ourselves. The GSAs have already initiated a regional subsidence management plan that includes the Kaweah, Tule, Tulare Lake, and King Subbasins. So we're all working together. We don't want to say that we're going to manage our pumping just so another subbasin can have more water so they can pump. It's got to be an equitable plan across all the subbasins. The second thing we're looking at is we're increasing recharge to increase groundwater levels. Not only increasing recharge, but also kind of strategically saying, where do we want to recharge the most water so we can manage subsidence? Maybe move the recharge around so with subsidence in mind, so we can raise water levels in the right places to control subsidence. And the third thing comes to this question about the fact that pumping from the lowest aquifers is what drives most of the subsidence. Looking at, can we move some of this pumping higher up in the aquifers? We don't want to say we cut people off, but if we can move it higher up in the aquifers, we reduce the amount of subsidence that we get from pumping. So those are three things, three actions you're going to see coming out in the next couple of years to try and manage subsidence. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Matt Clinchue, and he's going to talk about groundwater levels.
Good morning, everyone. Matt Clinchue, engineer with Program Pritchard. I was just told this wouldn't work on the screen, and it just did. So I'll figure out which one I want to use. But thanks all for coming. As mentioned, I'm going to touch base on groundwater levels. It's largely a focal point of SGMA, but in kind of my update, we'll be touching on a lot of the other sustainability indicators, such as water quality and subsidence, just because there's a lot of connection and ripple effects between water levels and all of those other items. So to take a step back kind of with an intro of the kind of vein that all the actions are going from, the mandate of SGMA is to work to avoid significant and unreasonable effects to beneficial uses and users. And the knobs that the GSAs have to turn is essentially implementing projects to kind of work to put more water in, demand management, kind of control the output side, as well as mitigation, which is a cost piece. So with that, the actions, kind of stepping through that, the first thing was to define significant and unreasonable impacts. That's things like dry wells, subsidence with impacted infrastructure, like Derek was alluding to, in general, chronic lowering that would reduce groundwater and storage for future use. So defining that, what is significant and reasonable, then what data do we have to plan and implement from? The well data set is imperfect. There's a lot of well completion reports and logs, but where they are, which wells are still there, is still sort of an unknown. Where they're pumping from, if there's perforations at multiple locations, and then densities, like who's the water going to, whether it's in and around communities or in a more ag-dominated area. So we've defined it. We're using imperfect data. How are we trying to use that? Essentially, we're working to plan and implement policies that would essentially change current practices that a lot of folks are doing. So that would go into effect with the groundwater allocations that are in place and policies on where water can and can't be used. Derek alluded to lower aquifer management. There's that last map that is largely tied to subsidence, but then as well as lower groundwater levels. And then mitigation program is embed in that too. So the various actions that are ongoing, I'll touch on the ongoing monitoring, what we're doing to fill some of those data gaps, and a lot of the other actions that we're hitting on related to water levels. So we'll kind of cover a number of things. So monitoring, doing spring and fall sampling. A lot of that has been tagging on from data that a lot of the member agencies of the GSAs have been using to try and get a good groundwater trend in data. We're actively going through the fall readings right now. So for some of you member agency folks in the rooms, I'll be reaching out to you for your data before too long. And then what do we do with that data? We're ultimately looking to compare it to Sustainable Management Criteria, or SMC, if you're familiar with all the acronyms that Sigma brought about, where we compile that into an annual report, and we're largely comparing to our minimum thresholds, which is kind of the levels we don't want to go down to, but we're looking at either are we achieving our measurable objective, what we're managing groundwater to, or are we trending towards that minimum threshold or below our minimum threshold in different areas of the subbasin. So that's ongoing. Some of the efforts, the next two slides will go into some of the data gap efforts that are ongoing or about to get going. One is well inventory. Some of that has been underway with GSA staff, looking at one aerial imagery to see if either well plots or other things can be found with in the aerials. Try to align that with well logs to see if we can align a location with well completion information, and then GSA staffs have been going out and trying to get a visual to confirm whether or not a well is there or there appears to be a wellhead on it. So it's the well inventory is largely the what is out there. It's not fully complete, but it does help firm up well counts, which largely drives mitigation cost budgets that is used for GSA budgeting each year. So that's compiled into our data management system and used by the various consultants in trying to help estimate those costs or work towards where there could be some problems in the future. The other program that is about to get underway, and there'll be more discussed on this one in, I think, right after I'm done talking, but is a well registration. So the well inventory, if it takes the what's out there, this kind of goes who's and where's it going. This one ultimately will be working with the landowners to understand whose it is, potentially confirm the construction information and how's it used. This will hopefully help understand where water's coming from, firm up what it's used for, whether it's more densely populated domestic well area or everything. Generally, most of these are working to figure out costs for future planning and implementation. The registration will also help with notification if there is results in the monitoring for seasonal and whatnot, and the GSAs will have a better opportunity to do targeted outreach to work with the landowners in those areas. Some other items is a number of bullet points that kind of hits a whole gambit of items that are all largely related to groundwater levels, because groundwater levels will either help locate some of these or determine the success of a number of these items. So implementing new projects. Over the last several years, the GSAs have been successful in receiving grant funding from a few different state programs to implement new projects. There's been 4 or 5 that have been completed in the last year. There's another about 8 I know of that are going to be trying to get constructed in the next 12 to 18 months. While implementing those, the GSAs are continually looking to evaluate new and more projects, and not just recharge basins, but potentially conveyance, better ways to more effectively move water around. With that, there's also the ongoing groundwater allocation evaluation with relation to groundwater levels and where water is going, based off how the groundwater is responding to actions being taken to date. As mentioned, there's the implementation of the mitigation program. That's a partnership with Self-Help Enterprises that is tackling a handful of wells already. And then Mark had also alluded to this small community well proactive and protective action plan. Essentially, that effort is looking to build relationships, understand what is the most risk with some different community wells that serve a group of people, and try and prevent a problem before it occurs, and hopefully not have to go down a really expensive fix after a problem's occurred. So a lot of these items will go into our annual reports, so that's submitted to the state in April every year. So water year 2025 just ended last month. We'll be working to collect our spring and fall sampling for 2025. Update hydrographs, which are on the screen, a change in storage map, which is the map depicted on the right side of the screen there. That's changed year over year. We'll also be touching base on some of the new projects that have gone into place, as well as where we stand with respect to our sustainable management criteria. I'll say that this water year 2025 annual report will have quite a significant update compared to prior years. There's been a lot of change with respect to the GSP in the last year and implementing under that. So when that becomes available really in March of next year, ahead of submitting to the state, there'll be quite a bit of information to update with all the actions of last year. So going into the near term, what are we focusing on? Obviously the projects that I mentioned, there's a handful of them that are going out to bid or looking to start construction in the near future, trying to capture more water, recharge it, or move it around. The GSAs will be continuing to push on those. The evaluating groundwater allocations, there's going to be more detail on that here shortly, but there's model updates and data updates looking to bring data more current, at least through water year 2024, to continue evaluating how the model's performing, how groundwater is reacting, and those various amounts for accounting. And then those action items, those data gap with well registration, well inventory, we'll be looking to complete those initial phases, have that data more available to be useful in our understanding as we plan and go forward. So that is groundwater levels in a nutshell, and a fairly decent segue for Mr. Fukuda to talk on well registration.
So we're going to transition now a little bit. We wanted to cover kind of the technical information that we're working on right now, and then now move into items where we're directly interfacing with you growers and how our programs that we're going to be putting in place, we need your help now, right? Or you can have your input into our program. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about is our well registration program. And this was an element that was included in our revised groundwater sustainability plan, as we realized that a lot of the data sets that Mr. Clinchy was talking about were incomplete. There's duplicative well records in there. So you may have had a well there, and it's in the state's system. The state tracks all the wells, and that well may not even be used anymore, but in their system, they think there's a well there. And oftentimes, they think that well is there, and they don't know the depth. We don't know the depth. We don't know what level it's pumping from, the size, and things like that. And so our advisory committees and our board have put an emphasis on trying to understand locally what our wells look like out there. So again, to the importance of local control, this well registration program is a local program being implemented by the 3 GSAs to coordinate with you landowners and have you register your wells with the GSA. This is not registering with the state. This will only be used for our data resources, won't be available to the public, but it helps us do some management of groundwater activities. We've worked on a well registration app that's been developed custom to the Kaweah Subbasin. You can go to this registration platform. It's a survey, actually, and when you enter into it, it'll step you through the items that you need to do to register your well. We've done this with some landowners already, and what we've noticed is the process takes about 10 to 15 minutes per well, and you get faster and faster if you have multiple wells. But we understand that not everybody has the time or the ability. A grower reached out to me yesterday based on the postcard and said, "Aaron, I don't even own a computer. So what am I supposed to do?" We got you covered. So the app is, you can do it on your computer, you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on a cell phone, you can do it in your office, you can do it out in the field, or you can come to our offices and do it with us. And so in the back, we've got a team back there. You can schedule a time to come in, and our staff will sit down with you and walk you through the process. And we don't need you to come with everything. There's some minimum requirements. We just need you to come in and tell us where you think your well is and your address to get started. If you have your well record, the driller's log, that's what we're really needing to fill in the information we need. If you don't have that, that's okay. We may be able to get that information for you now. So it's kind of a two-way process, we believe, this registration. It's going to help us inform on where our wells are at and where they're pumping from. And it may help you as landowners understand better where you know where your wells are at, but you may know more about where you're pumping from. And in the future, we can determine how our programs are put together. Because in reality, if we don't have this information, we're guessing at a lot of programs, how we're going to pump from different levels, what fees are we going to charge. So we can use this information to make sure that our programs are appropriate for what's happening out there in the real world, and then the fees are charged based upon really where you're pumping. So again, please help us get this registration. Our goal is to get all the wells registered in the Kaweah Subbasin by the middle of next year. And again, you can seek out our staff in the back. We will also have workshops. We've coordinated with COS here locally. They have computer labs, and so we'll be offering 3 registration workshops. So we'll be there, I think, several hours. You just come on in. There's computers there, and our staff can help you walk through that registration process. And again, I want to emphasize, it's local. It's only for communication and coordination with your local GSA. It's not available to the public. And we really, our boards and our committees and our staff really need this information to do our jobs better. So I encourage you to do it soon. We know, you wait too long, and at the very end, if everybody comes in at the last minute, it's going to be hectic. My blood pressure will go back up again. Put me on another medication. So please take this time now during this fall and winter. You can come and see us. Hopefully it encourages more rainy days, and you can come and sit and have a cup of coffee and visit with Andy, the guy in the back raising his hand. He's going to help us with well registration. So please take us up on that, and we encourage everybody to come in. And next I'm going to pass it to Mr. Hagman to cover some of our allocation programs.
All right, good to be with you. I watched a football game over the weekend, and the winning coach praised the other team for how good they did, and the other coach complained about how their stats were much better and they should have won that game. Well, I was very glad that we won the game. So we're going to talk about stats here and how important they are. Matt gave you the sort of 411 on groundwater levels. That's essential in terms of becoming sustainable in our efforts in the area. Most of our water comes from our mountain course, so our watershed in the Kaweah, St. John's, and then the smaller watersheds like Yokol and Cottonwood, Lewis Creek, et cetera. That's how we get most of our water. Some of our water is imported from the Central Valley Project, about 180,000 acre feet of that, but the balance of our water demands come from our surface supply in the Kaweah or our groundwater. So when the state can become a problem for us, but for the most part, our water is dependent upon what God puts up in the mountains to our east. And it isn't a function of what the state can or can't do. It can limit CVP, but for the most part, our water comes from that water source the basin we're living in. And we started allocating water in 2022. Essentially, our 22 allocations were probably just about what everybody needed. But since then, things have morphed, have become substantially worse. Our groundwater inflow is far less than we got in our first GSP rounds. We're about 180,000 acre feet overdrafting on average per year. So we have to slow that down. We have to eliminate that 180,000 acre feet of overdraft. Some of that's done by projects. A lot of projects have gone in, but that won't change the picture. There's only so much other surface supply coming in to help us offset our 180,000 acre feet. So roughly about a third of our problem can be solved by these projects. Getting wet year supply at 23 happens, and we just get all we can get in the area and put it in basins, and that's happening. We're all moving much faster now than as SGMA and towards those projects. But ultimately what we're gonna have to do is eliminate about 120,000 acre feet of groundwater demand from our basin. And so allocations is the way to do it. Now we allocate landowner A sitting out here in the valley gets the same amount of acre feet as landowner B up against the mountains, who's never used water. That's the allocation process. We're not adjudicators. We don't know how long they've been pumping it, or we don't know all the rules about how water was pumped. So we allocate correlatively, meaning every acre gets an amount of the native supply. So that it helps when we get water, more water in the ground, not going down. We've been going downhill roughly since about the early to mid 90s. It's not come back up. We do these little bumps, but the trajectory is negative. It's a negative slope. So we've got to reverse that. We've got to go flat, and for the most part, we all need to go up. Certainly the east side of the basin has to go up. That's how we're designed. So that's how our GSPs are laid out. So each GSA has established allocations. The native supply is what's allocated. There are other flows of water into our groundwater aquifer that aren't from native, or the amount of water God physically placed in this area. Although you remove water from the Kaweah system, that is water developed in the watershed, but people have a right to that water. They've developed a water right. So the allocation of native supply is based on the way that the GSA views the amount of supply. So we're all really close on the native supply. A little variance with greater Kaweah giving a smaller amount of, let's see. You guys are at 83? I thought you guys were 63 and then 20 on the. Okay, good. You guys are following. Oh, good, awesome. So we're all about the same.
That's collaboration.
That's collaboration.
A lot of collaboration.
You thought it was just checkered shirts, but hey, we do lots of other things the same. And so, as you can see, in the East Kaweah, there's no overdraft allowed. So you can't overdraft beyond your native value or any inflow you have from a surface supply activity. So the allocation in East Kaweah is 82 acre feet per acre, per 100 acres, and 72 acre. So let me define precipitation. It's not a pumping amount. We observe your property using evapotranspiration analysis done by Land IQ, and they say, okay, well that property removed 10 acre feet from the ground, and part of that's going to be precipitation. We always say it's the front end of that, the first 0.72 acre feet per acre that's consumed. The balance would be either pumped or supply provided by surface water purveyor. In the greater Kaweah, they're allowing 2 tiers of overdraft at 31 and 23. That's 31 acre feet per 100 and 23 acre feet per 100 on their, and they offer a penalty on that. So when you exceed that, any of these, in their program, it's $500 per acre foot. In the East Kaweah, if you exceed the allocation or your available supply, it's $500 an acre foot plus a 1-for-1 loss the following year. And so it gets really harmful. And the mid-Kaweah, they're a sort of anomaly. Mostly their pumping is done by their landowners in the Tulare Irrigation District. So the water that they allocate is water they put in the ground ahead of the system or in their area as well. So theirs is an 83, and with a 38 and a 37 following that. And then I'll talk about their precipitation values. So in the greater Kaweah, they're spread out across the basin. They go from the very far east to the very far west. So the precipitation, I leave my office, I get to my office, and I drive up to Craig's office at LSID, and they've got 1.5 inches more rain than we got, and I'm only 1.5 miles away. So there's a variance there. So on the east side, they're getting about 8 inches. On the west side, they're getting about 8 inches, 7 to 8 inches, and we're getting about 11 to 12 inches on the east side. So the mid-Kaweah, one area, they say, okay, our number is 0.54. Greater Kaweah said, we're gonna do these tiers as you go across. So they're allocating it based on where they're at in the subbasin. All of us are using a 25-year rolling average of the precipitation value. So if the precipitation value goes up, our number will go up. It's not going to change a lot, but it could change. So it could go down. In fact, this year I think it went down, if I'm not mistaken. Let me get on to the next. I've already discussed this. Yeah, the other thing it sounds like now, I mean, this is a touchdown for collaboration. We're all doing the same thing for the most part on our native supply. We're allocating it using the same values and getting so it's going to be a lot easier for folks to understand what they're doing. They're a little bit nuanced in mid-Kaweah because they are a surface water entity inside of the groundwater entity. I know in the east you have several landowners or several districts, water districts who receive CDP supply, and there's some variances there, but that's controlled by the federal government, the rules that follow the contract on that. Yeah, so what we're working on now is an agreement. So groundwater accounting framework. We used to call it water accounting framework, and then the hydrogeologists come in, they want to get fancy and call it for what it really is. It's groundwater, not surface water. So we're now calling it, and pardon the pun, but it's the GAF. And so we're using the groundwater accounting framework as sort of our relationship. It identifies inflows of supply in buckets. So their native supply bucket we have is X, and then Y would be any kind of local supplies delivered and flowing into the ground. So farmer A takes water and she spreads it across her ground and over irrigates, and some of that water is going to go in the ground, some of that water is going to go up in the air. That inefficiency is going to be recaptured in the groundwater as a credit to her property. Okay, and then there's another bucket. It's imported supply that isn't from here at all. It's mostly from the CDP, some off the Tule River and some off the Kings River. That's imported into the subbasin, delivered through a water right to an area, and then this over irrigation occurs, or this actual practice. Districts are now creating water recharge basins. So those values will be credited toward the actor in that case. So in the case of, I'll just use Linmore Irrigation District, which I run as well. We put about 35,000 acre feet in the past couple of years in the ground, and so that's credited to the district, and the district does what it does with the CDP contract. It allocates it out to landowners when they feel like they need to do that. Same thing I think with TID. They're using that in their allocation process. Okay, so I'll give you a really quick statement. An allocation year is, so the first allocation year we have began in October of 21. So it's October through September, October 1 through September 30. That's an allocation year. So we're right now, we just started allocation year 26, which includes October, November, December of this year, and then 9 months of next year. So just keep that in mind when you do your water budgets. We each have people that you can work with. We have a local water accounting program, the dashboard. We call it the dashboard. And you got Diana and Stephanie and Sierra and Scott, who are all they're kind of in charge of that stuff. So you can give them a call. They're in the back as well if you need help on understanding your water and the status of your water accounting. Now I turn over to Diana. Speaking of Diana.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Diana Zagara. I work at Kaweah GSA, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the water dashboard that we use in the Kaweah Subbasin. So the water dashboard, or the Kaweah Subbasin water dashboard, or just dashboard for short, is a platform that we use amongst the 3 GSAs, the Greater Kaweah GSA, the East Kaweah GSA, and the Mid Kaweah GSA, to provide you with transparent data for your management purposes in your operation. And we do this to provide you with information that you receive in the mail and your invoices, because we, all 3 GSAs, have an allocation program, or also known as an extraction limitation program. And so this is a view of all of that data in a platform that just is so much more than the invoices itself. And so I'll go over a little bit of what it looks like if you don't know. So this is the home page. I know there's only one slide up, and it's very small. But this is the home page. The home page typically is just a synopsis of all of your data that is put in the invoices and your operations. If you receive more than one invoice, it's for a water account. You can look at all of your water accounts collectively, or you can look at them separately, or you can look at them by field, by crop, and by APN. And then a part of our allocation programs, we work with a company called Land IQ, that they use technology to find the evapotranspiration of everyone's field and the precipitation of everyone's field. They do on-the-ground weather stations, and they also use satellite imagery or satellite technology. And so this is on the dashboard. You can see, again, your evapotranspiration data based off of crop, off of EPN, off of field. And you can see it in a graph. You can see it at the bottom in a little bit in a table, and you can always export this into a spreadsheet. I know spreadsheets are very important, and you guys can do your own calculations to see if we're doing a good job. And like I said, I showed some slides of the dashboard, and a lot of you do have, oh, they went down. But it's okay. If you already have a dashboard, that's fantastic. I recommend that you continue to look at it. And if you don't, please visit me at the table back over there that says Allocations and Water Dashboard and Wells. And we can get you signed up so you can see all the data that you already receive in these invoices, but just a little bit more, and you can put things into spreadsheets yourself and see if we're doing a good job. Oh, okay. The computer died.
Nice job, Diana, keeping your cool there with some curveballs. All right, good timing actually, because we're through the majority of the slides here. We're actually gonna move into just a portion of Q&A with you all. So we invite you. I did hear that if there's no questions, Mike is gonna do his stand-up comedy bit. So we encourage you to ask questions. There is a mic here at the front. Encourage you to come on up. Like I said, we do have one mobile mic on the move, and I think Amanda over here has it. So if you are unable to get up from your seat, you'd like her to run the mic over to you, just raise your hand and she'll come bring that to you. All right?
I have not been able to find out what exactly your business entity is in each of the GSAs. Is this a government agency? Is it a county agency? Is it a C Corp? Is it an LLC? And if that is the case, then that means you would have an annual comprehensive financial report that would be done. And are we able to access that? And then just a short statement, if the state really was interested in mitigating subsidence, then they would have, now let's go back a few years when Andy Vidak was state senator and brought to us Prop 1 and said that the politicians in Sacramento were guaranteeing that if we passed Prop 1, we down here would benefit from a dam up on Temperance Flats. If the state was really interested in mitigation of subsidence, they would have given that money, a couple of $2 billion, to generate that so that we could use surface water to offset our groundwater pumping. So if you really expect us to believe anything that's being told to us, the state's already proven that they're liars and that they are our enemy.
So in relation to your question regarding who we are, what we kind of form ourselves as, or joint powers, we're a local government entity. If you want financials, we have them. We perform audits on that financial, so we can provide you with that audit information. Regarding the Temperance Flat, I'd be applauding right with you. And we're dealt this deck of cards right now. We're trying to play with this deck of cards. The only thing I would say in regards to Temperance Flat, because I was the executive director of the Temperance Flat Reservoir Authority, is that as we did the analysis on even if we got all the money, or the portion that we would get out of the state and the federal government, the financial side for the burden of the growers would be tremendous, right? This is a $3.8 billion 10 years ago. And not only that, by the time we got the construction done, it would have been at the end of the SGMA timeframe. So we were looking at construction windows that put water supply in our coffers here and locally, 2035, 2040. That doesn't mean to say that effort was lost. Temperance Flat is still on the table. It's probably well north of $3.8 billion now. But locally, what we've decided is we understood the value of surface water storage. It is very valuable. So the Tulare Irrigation District and others locally are just investing in local storage versus regional storage. So again, we can control our own fate by controlling our own surface water storage. So we have two reservoirs we're working on currently, McKay Point Reservoir and Seaborn Reservoir, where we can store Kaweah River supplies, which complicated, don't have time to go into it, but it allows us to increase our CVP supply, so it acts like a CVP storage project. So your comments are timely, perfect. We are addressing those concerns and hope to bring you surface water storage by 2030 and give us 10 years worth of use prior to 2040, so we can actually meet our goals and objectives.
Regarding that, all of that water in Kaweah and Success, that's all owned So how do you accomplish acquiring extra water, we're going to call it that, for those recharge basins that you're talking about?
So for everybody that can't hear, the gentleman asked, so Kaweah River supplies are pre-1914 water rights that are quote unquote owned by individuals. And so how are you going to say, well, how are you going to increase it? Because if everything that comes down from there is owned, that's a perfect question. Two different ways. Number one is the Kaweah system. It is all owned, right? Pre-19, it's a fully appropriated stream under the State Water Resources Control Board. But there are years like 2023 where ownership doesn't matter at that point. Mother Nature is going to unload on you. So you can capture some of those extra supplies through your surface water reservoir. And we all know there's managers up here that operate with a local supply and a CVP supply. We are working with that system. Again, that reservoir we're building allows us to take the flood water that we're receiving in the Kaweah, put it into our surface water storage, and allows us to keep our CVP turnout open. If we were under current day operation without that reservoir, we have to manage those Kaweah River flood supplies and shut our CVP turnout because you'd be stacking flood water on top of flood water, which we could cause a problem. And then the third component is many of us are looking at other opportunities. Are they easy? Absolutely not. Are they cheap? No. But we are looking at supplies that we can bring in from the west side, anywhere we can go out there and try and work programs and opportunities to bring excess water into our subbasin. And what I will tell you is we're doing it today, not trying to wait till tomorrow. Because if you do it tomorrow, add another $1. Wait till Thursday, add another $1. Wait till Friday. So we are actively trying to find extra water supply. It's not an easy venture, I'm going to tell you right now, but we're trying.
Okay, I'll continue.
We've got a question right here.
If the Boswell Company's lawsuit against the state concerning their water rights and subsidence in the Tulare Lake Basin, if they are victorious, would that not affect our rights and the needs that they're demanding of our water rights, and we're losing water rights is what's happening. But if they're victorious, would that not affect what you are doing right now?
My initial read, and I'll let the other managers kind of weigh in on this, is my initial read is that it's kind of a process-related lawsuit. So let's just say they're victorious. Then the state board has to go back 2 steps in order to go forward, right? So does that affect us? It doesn't eliminate SGMA. It doesn't say you must achieve groundwater sustainability. So in my viewpoint, it does nothing to our sustainability other than cause a potential issue between their subbasin and our subbasin. Because again, it was pointed out multiple times, like on regional subsidence, and it makes it difficult for us to stand here and tell you we are going to implement a program that says we're going to try and solve subsidence if our neighbors are going to have a reprieve. But I sense that, and I live in the Tulare Lake Subbasin in the Mid-Kings. They're working as hard as we are working, and you see they've come out with allocations. And groundwater sustainability isn't something that we should be afraid of. We should be looking at it as a way of stabilizing who we can be in the future as a small farming community or a vibrant farming community.
Aaron, doesn't all of our groundwater eventually end up in the Tulare Lake Basin? So if they continue to pump, it will affect our groundwater flow.
My assessment is not all of our groundwater ends up there, but our groundwater is inextricably tied to and for instance, if I owned 100 acres, what I do on my property impacts what my neighbors are going to do. So, but all of it doesn't end up there. It's just impacted by how we operate and use that groundwater, right? So it's not like it just all heads down that direction. We're using it as it heads down that direction. So we're neighbors, right? And I will say we're coordinating with them regarding the subsidence-related issues and the impacts we're seeing and trying to work regionally towards a solution.
We have a couple questions over here at this table. If we have the mic. Oh,
Let me go ahead and ask then. The state water code, reading their code, states specifically that the highest priority for water in the state of California is domestic use. The second highest priority for water in the state of California is irrigation. When they break their own code by sending water down the San Joaquin River and out through the Delta and do not provide for irrigation, why is there not either a revolt or a class action lawsuit or whatever to require the state of California to make that water available for irrigation?
Well, the San Joaquin River settlement was certainly the effort to put a line in the sand for that. I'm not sure we gained much from that settlement and still struggle with that. I know there's been various efforts to bring that up again and resettle on that because there is water that was lost to this area that is provided to the San Joaquin River. It does affect us. It's not a silver bullet. It's something that we do need to get resolved for this area and try to get some of that water back. But it's one of many, and so I think it has to do with resources and such. You can spread yourself only so thin trying to deal with things. That's a monumental effort to try to turn that around.
yeah, the question's over here.
Thank you. The question is, to confirm, is the well registration program inclusive of all 3 GSAs?
Yes. Yeah, if each GSA is, we're doing it across the subbasin. So, yeah, Mid, East, and Greater are working together to implement the well registration process. The well registration app is applied across the entire subbasin. It's one app. You're going to open it. It's not going to look different in the Greater Kaweah than the Mid Kaweah. Same app.
Right. Assuming that we get approved, go back to DWR for management, are we finally going to be at a point where this isn't going to keep changing on us? Kind of we can look at the forecasted ramp downs and stuff and kind of plan for the future of farming that way? Or because of subsidence and stuff like that, are we still going to have to be like, oh, wait, we're taking away half an acre foot here earlier than before? You know, kind of what's our long-term future look like now?
That really is an excellent question. We are in the position that we are with potentially going back to DWR because our plan has in it those elements. That's kind of the hard facts. We do need to continue with our allocations. We do need to continue with understanding better the lower aquifer and probably making restrictions there so that we can get in line with subsidence potential. So I guess, you know, the reality is we have to go on this path. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be some challenges for all of us to meet those needs, to get to sustainability. And so getting in better graces with the state, I'll call it, is good in that they are saying, we like your plan. We think you're going to get, with all the elements you have in it and the plans you have moving forward, we think you'll reach sustainability. So we really have to buckle down and achieve those goals.
I get that question every day, and I think the way I answer it is, what I think you're asking is for stability. I need a plan that says if I do X, Y, Z, I'm good to go. And so the way I answer that now is we are going back to DWR with a new groundwater sustainability plan with some hard questions and yet to be answered. So in the next 2 or 3 years, I cannot commit to you that everything's going to be fixed in stone, but I think we're going to be working with landowners and with our technical group to try and find a path that does get you, for instance, in our groundwater accounting framework, the goal there is to get to an allocation that stays in place in 5-year chunks. So for 5 years, you're set. Across the subbasin, everybody. And then, you know, the one risk that we all have in there is you get to a 5-year period and 3 of those years are drought. We have to react to that. So I would say that we're going to strive to get to a point where you have stability and off-ramps if we have issues, right? But we understand that it's not fun to be, today you're at 1, tomorrow you're at 0.5, the next day you're at 2, and what's happening. So we understand that question and that priority or desire to have some stability. How can you own a business if you don't have stability, right? We understand that. So what I'm saying is what we're guaranteeing is trying to get to that point where it's stable. But I wish I had a perfect answer for you, and I don't, in all honesty.
Yeah, Mike, did you have anything else? We heard from 2. Yeah. There's a question, I think, over here, the gentleman in the blue.
Kind of what I wanted to know is, you know, the cities are kind of like black holes where they pump out and use a lot of water. And I'm wondering why in most years that the ponding basins aren't being used to put water back in to help with recharge. Most of the time they're empty. I understand they're only available during flood years, but that seems kind of nonsense to me. When they run water down the river in January or something, why aren't they putting water in these ponding basins to help alleviate some of the stress that's in our ground? And nothing's been done to, you know, I hear different reasons for it because they have we can only use them in flood years, but why aren't they being used every year? Because cities use a tremendous amount of water, and I don't see any help in that regard.
So I think to understand because part of the Big Kaweah, our partners are the city of Visalia and the city of Tulare, and you're absolutely right. The problem that exists within the cities is completely different than the problem that exists within the rural agricultural area. And we call it a cone of depression, which is their pumping continues, and it, you know, on it every day. They don't get to rest the pumps, and they don't have any surface water. So the pre-1914 water rights largely are held by agricultural interest in the Kaweah Subbasin. And the CVP contracts in large, there are a few small communities on the eastern side of the subbasin that use surface water, but generally they don't have access to that surface water unless they're gonna partner with an irrigation district to do that recharge. So then when you partner with an irrigation district, we work collaboratively with, well, Mark used to be the general manager of Kaweah Delta Water Conservation District, or the cities, and we have these big ponding basins that are out there that you see, and it's frustrating to see them without water in the wintertime. But what we're doing is we're taking that water supply and typically applying it to irrigation demand that might be happening at that time, and that's actually better than putting it in the recharge basin because we're never pumping what's down in the groundwater system out. So it's a delicate management of water supply availability versus what the demand is going to be for that water. If there's demand by our landowners, we're going to send it to them first. Then if there's any excess, we're going to put it in the recharge basins. But there is not enough surface water around to fill all those needs all at once, but only in those wet years like 2017, 19, 23, and 11, and dare I say 2026, I hope. But so that's a really good question. I hope I answered it. It's not an easy decision. We always want them full, but there's not enough water to keep them full all the time. And the cities have a different operating parameter, and just so the audience is aware, the cities are just as concerned and their actions are probably going to be more immediate and more costly than what we're seeing currently. The Mid-Kaweah is conducting what we call a strategic plan with the 2 cities, and the issues are, I would say, magnitudes larger that we're going to be dealing with, but they're committed to solving those problems. And they're going to have to do it with dollars and water, and it's going to be very expensive. But we're starting that process, and I see good things coming out of that here. So, and again, just so everybody's aware, between the cities and the ag, hey, folks, we don't get to the finish line unless we're all there at the same time. If we begin to fight internally, it looks bad, right? And so remember, the communities rely on us and we rely on the communities. We need to work together to get to that finish line. Otherwise, we're all scrambling. You know, when you scramble, everybody doesn't make it to the finish line.
Great. I know we had a question in the back of the room.
So before I say my question, I just want to thank the 3 GSAs for all the work that you guys have done. You know, I follow sort of all the work that you guys have done, and so it's a lot. And congratulations for getting out of probation. So cheers to that. My question's kind of long, so I wrote it down. So have there been any conversations from the GSAs to create programming that focuses on the small-scale farmer? I know sometimes, you know, my clientele is all small-scale farmers, so we often talk about, because they have like a shallower well, you know, they're often the canary in the coal mine, right? With storage and levels of groundwater, and you know, those are the wells that go dry first. So has there been any conversations between the GSAs? I know as programming expands, you know, it's going to include sort of everybody, but has there been any sort of conversations to maybe even define what a small-scale farmer is in Kaweah, what that looks like? I think that'd be great for the state as well, so they can dish out some resources for that smaller scale farmer, things like MLRP or land flex, sort of anything sort of pushing the hand of the state to divvy up some more resources for that smaller scale farmer.
Well, first of all, thank you for your question. That's something that I'd like to see more of. In fact, if we can start a conversation on that, I think that would be very valuable. I don't know that we have as many tools as I'd like to see that support the small farming community, because I think there's certainly a lot of challenges with the implementation of SGMA to small farmers. The Greater Kaweah has a fallowing program that we do annually, and I think it's well suited for the small farmers in that they can select land that they're just having trouble having enough water to support that property, and they agree to fallow that land for a year and get paid for that. This year, it's our 3rd year of this pilot program, and we have almost we had applications that added up to $1.6 million worth of those that were interested in fallowing their property. So I think that, at least for the year, retires a lot of water and gives the growers some options to maybe make some decisions and decide what they want to do the next year.
Yeah, we've gone round and around in the Mid-Kaweah because that, like you said, can we share a definition of small farmer? And I've heard probably about a dozen different definitions based on income, based on acreage, based on crop, based on, you know, some people have added ethnicity in there, and I didn't like that one. And so the way the Mid-Kaweah operates when it comes to, we are all small growers in the big pond, right? And so what we do is we create programs that are accessible and equally available to everybody. And not only that, my staff knows that if you walk in the door and you own an acre, or you walk in the door and you own 1,000 acres, we don't really care. We're going to help in the best way we can to keep you in business, right? So the answer isn't no. The answer is what can we do and how can we get to the right answer. So I wish I had an answer that said, hey, we have a program that does X, Y, Z. But then in my mind, then we're saying, okay, you get this and you don't get that. We say everybody gets access to everything, right? So come talk to us. What are your issues? What are your fears? What are your worries? And then we use our programs to solve some of those fears and worries. And we don't care if you have an acre or you have, well, I'll be very honest. In our district, we looked around the boundary. It's 4 acres and more is generally where we're at. So if you have 4 acres or you have 1,000 acres, you're gonna get the same level of service.
Great, we've got a question up here. We do always have the mic up front. Just want to remind folks.
too far to walk. One of the fundamentals of the native yield calculation is that you have land. And if we idle land to be able to move that allocation to existing permanent crops, for example, and you fallow it, and it stays fallowed for maybe forever, and then it gets repurposed into a equipment yard or something else because it's no longer going to be farmed, is there anything that would change the definition of that native yield allocation on that property? Because it's something different than farmland.
So right now, the way the GSAs are approaching it is your land is assumed to be agricultural land. I think it's 4 acres in each of theirs. Ours is 2 acres or more, so you're assessed. It's assumed to be agricultural land and allocated a groundwater supply, a native supply. So when you take the total amount of that water and you divide it by the acres that we have assessed, that's the number we come up with, the 82 or 83 acre feet per 100 acres. So nothing, in that regard, nothing's going to change. If you want to drop your acreage below their threshold, that might change it. You know, you'd say, I'm going to split these parcels into all 2-acre parcels. In their GSA, you might lose that allocation. So be sensitive to that and just focus. The objective is to equilibrate the amount of water we're taking out of the ground with the amount of water that's coming in. So and you get, as you get further west, this gets a little more doable. On the east side, it's a little more challenging. The basin on the east side is much smaller, and we're at a higher elevation. So when the water comes in, it kind of passes through us and lands out here to our west. That's ultimately how it works. And so you have, on the western side, or basically anything past 65, Highway 65, you're in sort of a deep basin. Everything else is working off the fringe of the basin, the elevation of the slowness of the flow or whatever for that supply. So your focus would be if you got 100 acres and you picked up 20 more to help offset your water balance, that's a good farm practice, capital practice. You have to make that decision financially on your own. Did that answer your question? Nothing's going to change that I know of. I mean,
Just if it gets developed into something else because it's idle is what I was concerned.
So we've had this pop up. So the big question is, what if I put a big solar array on that field? So we're discussing that internally. And again, Mike pointed to it. We're trying to preserve as much agriculture as we can. I know that sounds strange, and all the things I get told all the time. Yeah, Aaron, you keep telling me that's not what's happening. But in reality, if you're going to keep that in some sort of ag operation, you're going to leave it in some sort of ag yard and something like that. We consider that part of the ag operation. We leave it in there. If you're going to convert it over to solar and now the profit margins on that field are due to solar revenue, then to us, that's not agriculture. So, but we are working on policies that may address that. We just haven't, in the mid-Kaweah, the only solar arrays we see are solar arrays that are incorporated within an ag operation. Like you're going to put a couple acres into a solar array and then use that power for and to us, that's part of your operation. But if you're going to move to a utility scale and sell the PG&E in Southern Cal Edison, now you're taking out 30, 40 acres. We have to address that. If you're going to take it out and you're going to build we've had this where, some people said, oh, we're going to take that out and we're going to build some industrial buildings for industrial, farming operations like shops and businesses and stuff. The Mid-Kaweah would view that as no longer within our emergency ordinance or program, so therefore it would not be allocated because it's not 4 acres or greater of agriculture. So.
I don't mean to be different, but we haven't decided that in East Kaweah. We're still focused on if you're assessed, you're allocated an amount. Whether you converted that, we have not talked about it. I would presume if a person's taking their land and putting in solar, it's a demand reduction effort so as long as you're, using that, going in the right direction, yeah. So to me, I don't know, my board president's here and my vice president, they could throw paper airplanes at me or something, but I don't see that changing in the east.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Yeah, Aaron, what's the price structure for the city? What are they charged?
Well, so again, that's what I was talking about. The cities are currently working on a program, and right now they're paying 1/3 of all the costs of the GSA fees, right? So the two cities are coming 2/3 of the GSA costs. And then their projects and their programs that are going to be implemented will be at their own expense, right? So they're talking about large recycle programs that are, Visalia has implemented a $140 million recycle program that sends that water to Tulare Irrigation District, and we use that water. And then we exchange them excess water back to recharge into there. So I don't have a absolute cost, but right now what I can say is they're paying 1/3 of all current operating costs for the GSA, and they're going to take care of their own projects.
So talking about the, want me to use that one?
Go for it. It's already here.
Talking about the lower aquifer and the upper aquifer. Last year, you kind of conveyed, maybe I misread it, that there were going to be some potential for moving wells out of the lower aquifer and up into the so-called upper aquifer. And that would mean that that upper aquifer would go dry. I realize that's not the right termination for it, but that upper aquifer then would lose viability very quickly if the ag interests were pulling out of that upper aquifer. So my question is this: all, I'm willing to bet, of the city wells, California Water Service and City of Tulare, all of the city wells are obviously pulling from the lower aquifer? That's a question. And so the cities then get to continue to pull from the lower aquifer, which you guys say cannot be recharged, and it will increase subsidence, whereas all of us could potentially be pushed out of that lower aquifer and have to go to the upper aquifer and then lose access to water because that water's not available when we all start pulling out of that. This is setting up the cities to be able to utilize all of the water irregardless of our 1914 water rights or anything else. It's going to end up all going to city, and our farmland is going to be worthless, and the state will have provided a method for a taking of the value of our property without compensating us for that value.
So number one, not all of the city's wells are below the cork and clay. We're going through the well registration process with them too. They're registering their wells, so we'll know better. So they do it, like Tulare has significant amount that are below the cork and clay, and they are experiencing subsidence. And again, I'm very blunt with it. Their solution set is going to be very expensive, very immediate, and it's going to be tough. But the volume of water that they pump is by in comparison, it's not compared to agriculture. And so what we're trying to do is feather that approach where they're going to have to do a little bit of cutback, and there are ways to put water below the cork and clay and support it, and we're looking into those as fast as we can to try and get those projects in place, but it is going to be a difficult conversation. We are talking about trying to feather some of the lower aquifer pumping and transition it, as Derek Williams talked about, bring it up a little bit more, because if you think about it, we've been using groundwater and surface water. At the surface, it's going down, and it's hanging up in that upper aquifer. So we think there's some interplay between the two levels. Again, this is something we're trying to get our hands around, and before we make decisions on all these very critical decisions, we need to know who's pumping where, how, and then we can put a plan together to do that. And our goal is to give you guys as much time as much pumping as possible, and we just don't know that exact number right now yet. We're working on it. But it would be foolish for us to not say, we got it under control, don't worry about it. You know, we're working on it. We need your cooperation. We need you to work with us so we can better understand it. We just don't have all the exact answers right now.
So this real quickly, let's talk about cities for just a moment. And I've only got two cities, a public utility district in the city of Lindsay. Typically speaking, when you flush the toilet, that water doesn't go out into the air and evaporate and go away, and we don't see it anymore, right? That's all recaptured. Additionally, the cities capture stormwater. So net impact to water is, the water use is far less than farming. So we can pick on that as an easy point to point at. The challenge we have with cities is they have a well that's going straight down right here, and they're servicing a lot of people from that well, and it's always on. So your draft cone's created. These are the experts that you want more detail on that, but they create the draft cone, they create this depression. That's the challenge. Maybe they need to install several smaller wells across the city, get away from the single large pumping effort. So our city of Lindsay is at what we call a net provider. They put about 1,500 acre feet in the ground because they import about 60% of their supply, and they groundwater pump the balance. And a lot of their water, you got to remove, not counting the pools and the flora that they water. Everything else is done through your sewer system and captured, and the stormwater system. So it almost nets out, not quite. It's about a quarter foot per acre that their demand is.
And just for City of Visalia and City of Tulare, I can tell you right now, bulk of their water ends up, actually, the production of the water ends up in agricultural accounts. So City of Visalia delivers 9,000 acre feet average annual. They're pumping to Tulare Irrigation District. And the City of Tulare, it's probably 75% of their water ends up with the agricultural interest around the wastewater treatment plant. And listen, folks, I deal with this every day, right? I represent the two cities and agriculture, so I have to balance those two different issues and the two different impacts. And as I've learned through this entire process here with my two fellow general managers within the Greater Kaweah and the East Kaweah, what I've learned is we all have differences, right? And we have different uses for water, we have differences. And the more that we point fingers and say, you're different than me and you got a problem and I don't, we will not solve the problems. But if we say, here is the differences and come to the table and work those differences out, that's why we're here today and we're not under probation. And I'm proud of that. So I want everybody to take that home and realize that even your neighbor, right, could be different than you in doing something different, right? But let's try and provide that leadership and that understanding where we can not argue over what our differences are. We can work our differences out and solve problems with those differences. So if you, city, have an issue because you don't know where to put your treatment water, this is what happened in the case of City of Visalia. If you don't know where to put your treatment water, guess what? I can tell you where you can put it. You can put it in our turnouts, and we'll use it. And do you have a problem under your city? Yeah, we do, but we can't get access to surface water. Well, any excess that TID can get for you, we'll put it near your wells and start filling up that hole. So we started that program around 2019 or so, and we're starting to see the beginnings of some returns on that investment. On our western side of our irrigation district, our water levels are beginning to stabilize. And under the City of Visalia, they're beginning to see their water levels stabilize also. And that's going to take us several years. But that's where we took the differences, put them on the table, and came out with a project and a solution, and now we're starting to see the benefits of that. So stick with me a little bit. I'm going to ask you for a little bit more patience. I know it. There are these, well, I don't think this is right, and I don't think that is right. Bring those to me like we just did, and I'll put them on the table and start solving those differences with solutions.
Yeah, I think
Constituents in that water being part of your evaluation. He's looking at constituents. Some of those constituents come from this reclaimed water from sewage, correct?
Correct,
Now
yeah.
we're adding those at the top of the aquifer.
Actually, what we're doing is, we're talking to in the programs is, would you rather pay for synthetic fertilizer or no synthetic fertilizer?
Use both.
So if I told you your water had so many milligrams per liter of nitrates and you can put that into your calculation and use it instead of pay for it, would you go ahead and pay for it?
Likely.
Yeah, so what we're doing is working with individuals to identify where our programs are, where we have water with like high nitrates and things like that. Well, let ag pump that and use it, because you don't want the nitrates in the water, and then we'll put fresh, clean surface water back behind it. We do have some other problematic water quality issues, as you saw in there. 1, 2, 3 TCP, these various other things. Well, guess what? That wasn't agriculturally applied, and I don't blame it on any of you. The chemical companies hid it in the pesticides. They're not showing up under the city, under agriculture. Is the map just showed you, they're all under the city of Tulare and Visalia. So we are beginning to work together. So that issue is the cities went after the chemical companies and have received settlement funds, and so they can put the treatment systems on to treat that. So it's a interwoven. Yes, that's one of the jobs we have to do now. GSAs on the water quality are very specific. We are not to make the conditions worse. There are other programs that are, so we don't want to step on, if we came in on the irrigated lands or the Kaweah Water Foundation and then started working without their coordination on our own, I'm going to tell you right now, what they're going to do is they're going to collect money from the growers to implement that program, and we're going to collect money on our side to implement that program. What we're trying to do, and what Trey pointed out, is we're being very deliberate about this is our responsibility and this is your responsibility. Otherwise, we're going to double collect. And that is a big no-no in my mind, is we are not going to double hit our growers for two different programs trying to do the same thing. So we're being very careful and deliberate about that program stays in the Kaweah Water Foundation and this stays in the GSA world.
So how do we know there's collaboration between?
We are coordinating with the Kaweah Water Foundation.
How do we know that?
We're trying to inform you, in the presentation, we're working with those organizations. We're having these sub-basin meetings. We're trying to inform you on what activities we're having. You can come to any one of our board member meetings, or just like our staff, if you're in the mid-Kaweah, you need my cell phone number, you can have it. You can call me and ask me. You can call any one of my staff members, and we can get that information to you.
I don't hear their voice. That's the point. The water quality.
Well, again, yeah, we are working with an MOU on them, and the Kaweah Water Foundation is a separate entity than us. And we understand the frustration. Well, who are you? And it gets confusing to me. So I can only imagine what it's for you folks, but understand that the Kaweah Water Foundation has their directives. They have their programs. Growers are funding that, and we don't want to step on their toes, and they don't want to step on ours.
So if I'm a city, I would rather have a 2,000-foot well so that I sidestep these constituents.
Not necessarily. There's constituents at 2,000. Yeah.
You see, my question is that we're looking at getting greater utilization of all waters, all sources. It's a handsome idea. I love it. But at the same time, we're not, as growers, aware of what those constituents are and how they're being reintroduced into the aquifer.
So
that's the big concern.
The gentleman's question is that when the cities do things right, or they use water and they put it back in, there's constituents that come with that, right? So wastewater has nitrates and salts and various other things in it. So if you reuse it, it's coming back into the system, right? So how are we going to know that we're not creating another problem, right? And that's part of our monitoring system, is if that's a GSA action, we've got to monitor that. And if we're creating a problem, we can't do it, right? Or we have to mitigate for it. We have to say, okay, if there's a constituent coming in on that water supply, we have to clean it out before it gets there, right? So if we identify a new chemical or something, because the state board has a list of these things they're going to be looking at, it pops up, we might not be able to do the program. yeah, that's a good concern there.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the questions and the dialogue. I think it's great because it just showed that the topics covered today, you all have questions, and I think, you know, the GSAs are talking about how they're working through these really complex issues still. So Mark, you know, gave that welcome at the beginning of the presentation. Attend the board meetings where they're discussing these things and figuring these things out and making the decisions. Attend the committee meetings of the agencies. Sign up for their email lists. They all have email notification lists. If you're not on those already, that's how they announce that they're holding those meetings. On the back of the publication, there's a sign-up link where you can go sign up for those lists if you're not on there. We also thought there may be more questions today, right? And you want to talk to any of the folks here, whether it's the technical subject matter experts or the GSA managers. So we do have the tables at the back for you to go find them and talk in more detail about some of the questions or issues that were discussed today. So really appreciate everyone participating in the Q&A. I'm going to hand it over to Mark to just give us a recap before barbecue lunch is coming. Mark's going to give us the recap, and then we will get you guys going for that lunch.
So I think first and foremost, our position with the state is a great place to be. You heard that message today that we're out of the threat of probation, it looks like, and we'll get that cinched up on December 2nd, and I think that's just really important. I gotta say it again, it is, that effort was really supported by all our technical consultants that we have here in the Kaweah Subbasin. You know, each GSA has hired their experts, hydrogeologists, engineers, on and on, to help us be successful, but they all three work together to the success that we have today. And it's Montgomery and Associates, Four Creeks, Intera, Provost and Pritchard, and Thomas Harder and Company, and many others that really helped us to be successful. And a lot of them are here today, and I just want to thank them again for their great, just, you know, one thing is that I can't understate is that, or overstate maybe is the word I'm looking for, is how well they all work together, even though they were hired by three separate GSAs. But I think that's also a testament as how the GSAs work well together. Really appreciate that. As you heard, we're focusing a lot of our energy now on the actual implementation, working on priorities such as groundwater quality, land subsidence, and groundwater levels. You heard about that today, and I think that's really the most important things we can do to push our goal towards reaching sustainability. We are committed to, and I forgot about the slides here, to continue to work on the efforts we talked about here in some of the Q&A and other discussions about recharge and bringing in surface water when available. Yes, demand management through allocations is really important. So we have both supply side, like bringing in water, demand side, reducing the amount that can be pumped. Those have to work in unison for us to be successful at reaching our goals. We'll continue to do the seasonal water quality. Hopefully we can stay in a positive direction with our sampling there. And it's really important that we fill data gaps. If we're going to manage groundwater appropriate, it's really data driven. We need that data. Better data prevents us from being overcautious and conservative, and we've talked about that today. Let me describe it another way. If I gave you a task, a plane with a tank full of gas, and asked you to fly from New York to London, going across the ocean, but I didn't tell you how much gas you had in the tank, you'd be severely challenged with that task. And my guess is you'd be like me and say, I got to be real conservative here. I got to go slow or whatever I can do to reduce the fuel use of this plane to make sure I make it across. Conversely, if you knew how much the gas tank held in the plane, you knew what kind of fuel efficiency you were getting, and you had the ability to keep track of all those stats, it would be a totally different picture, right? You could do the math, and based on science, you could figure out how fast you could fly and if you had enough gas to make it across. That's kind of where we are and why we keep emphasizing data and understanding the wells that we have, where they are, how deep they are, and where the perforations. All this information helps us to do that job. Without it, we're kind of flying blind, and we're doing our best guess. And if we have to guess, we're going to guess on the conservative side. We're going to play it safe to make sure we get to 2040. So well registration processes and well inventory is very, very important to us. So repeating again, and these are just important points, is that stay engaged. You know, you're very welcome to attend our board meetings, our committee meetings. We all have email lists where we can give you blasts of things that are happening and how we're updating things. One of those is allocations that happens every year about this time, you know, starting about midsummer, where we're going and what the next allocations will be. If you're on the email list, you'll receive that information. The dashboard is your ticket to keeping track of your water use and best managing that. We're here to help on that. All 3 GSAs have staff that's ready to take your phone calls or walk-ins, and we'll explain it to you and help you. The system's not perfect, but we can tell you what the system is telling you, how you can manage your water better with that information, and maybe even make some suggestions to you as to options you have for managing. So thank you for coming today. The best part is coming, and that is lunch. And just really appreciate you took the time. I saw a few people walk out, and we all have busy schedules. A lot of you stayed through the whole thing, and that's just awesome. We do have a great lunch for you today.
Becca, really quickly, I just wanted to, we wouldn't be here if it were for not a group of people. And, you know, I've learned over life to surround yourself with special and intelligent people, and then maybe you get to slip in their picture and look special and intelligent. So I continue to surround myself with a staff that does spectacular work and tries to work hard on your behalf. And so could the staffs of the 3 GSA kind of wave and stand up so you can see who they are and try and check in with them. They're here to help you. And then there's a really special group of people in here that have come together. We keep alluding to it, and I don't know if you ever want to spend time and see how things, we don't have an explanation for it. We can't figure it out, but we brought in 5 consulting teams to help us get across the threshold here. And traditionally, when you see something like that happen, everybody comes in and says, they're the best. And what we got out of this group of people is we're going to give you our best, right? So, and not only that, they gave us lunch too. So could we have the Intera, the Montgomery Associates, the Thomas Harder, the Four Creeks, the Pros and Pritchard team stand up, and we can thank you for all the hard work and things that you've gotten us to success. So please stand up. Okay, now back over to Becca.
Okay, we keep saying lunch, but I do want to just highlight again the table exhibits that are around this side wall in the back there. If you have a question about your well registration, the well inventory process, there is a wells table. Gavin is very humble, but I'm going to say he knows a lot about well information and well data and what it looks like to manage that data in the context of SGMA. So talk to him about that, about well inventory. Andy is there as well. Scott Mescal is there. If you have questions about registration, you want to set up an appointment with those guys, you can. If you've never used the water dashboard, you have no idea what that tool even is or what it's for, there's a water dashboard table and an allocations table. Scott and Diana will be there to show you what it can do, show you how you can use it to help you out. And then we have these folks who have been on the panel are going to be at the GSP implementation table to talk more about anything GSP related to the surface water recharge projects, the water quality, subsidence, groundwater levels, all those things. If you want to ask questions, head to those tables, okay? So I just wanted to call those out. And then now, finally, here we are, lunch. So I'm going to excuse everyone.